Sources tell CNN that the White House was directly involved in Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche's order to formally rescind the so-called anti-weaponization fund. It's a key step for Blanche's Judiciary Committee confirmation vote set for tomorrow. That order won over the two key Republican holdouts on the Judiciary Committee, Senator John Cornyn of Texas and Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina. Cornyn and Tillis say they got what they wanted, a, quote, legally enforceable document ending the existence of the fund and limiting President Trump's sweetheart tax immunity deal with the IRS. But here's the issue. Blanche's apparent assurances are riddled with loopholes. On the fund, Blanche rescinded a separate order that he wrote that actually created the fund under the terms of the settlement. The settlement itself, however, still exists, and the settlement could still be enforced. Cornyn knows this, too. Here he is last week.
Todd Blanche can say that it's a dead letter, but the fact of the matter is he conceded that there is a settlement agreement which creates an enforceable contract. It could be revived at a later time.
A Republican lawyer who applied to serve on the board of the fund posted on X this, quote, can be undone after Tuesday. That's the day after Blanche's confirmation vote in the Judiciary Committee. Then, of course, another part of this all is this IRS deal that led to the initial establishment of the fund. Remember, Trump sued his own administration. Now, Cornyn wanted to limit the agreement that offers Trump and his family, members of his family, immunity from tax investigations and make it clear it only applies to past investigations against Trump and those listed in the suit. But Blanche's new order was more of a clarification rather than a modification, restating the Justice Department's interpretation of the order. Unlike the first document, Blanche didn't even bother to sign this one. Joining us now, CNN's Caitlin Collins and former DOJ official Tom Dupree. And, of course, we have with us Maggie Haberman of the New York Times, co-author of the new book, Regime Change. Great to have all of you. Caitlin, let's start with you. Trump was asked if he personally signed off on rescinding this anti-weaponization fund. How did he respond, and what are we learning about the scope of the White House's involvement?
Well, Jake, the president said he did not sign off on what it was that Todd Blanche had agreed to with these two Republican holdouts who were holding up his nomination, of course, before that vote that is scheduled for tomorrow, though he did praise Todd Blanche inside the Oval Office and also praised this fund in and of itself, Jake, saying that it is very popular in some quarters and that he views it as a positive thing that these people who were convicted of crimes on January 6th could potentially get paid out by the federal government. But obviously, Jake, the one thing that the White House wanted to get across the line here was Todd Blanche's confirmation as the next attorney general. And the president said this to reporters about this.
I didn't look at it. All I know is that Todd Blanche is great. He's going to do a great job. Everybody knows it. And I understand there's been a sign off. But I don't know what they agreed. I think Todd Blanche agreed to reconfirm things that he's already said. And what he said was, okay, no, there's no other evidence that I know about.
That answer there at the end, Jake, was when the president was asked if there are other ways that these payouts could potentially happen despite Blanche rescinding the fund. He said he didn't know. Of course, critics have said today that doesn't mean that it won't actually happen. But the White House was directly involved in what Todd Blanche signed off on. Obviously, he would not make an agreement with these Republican senators that did not have the White House's blessing, even if the president was unhappy about it and still believes that the fund should be able to move forward. But really, the reason that the White House agreed to this, Jake, was because they wanted to be able to get Todd Blanche's confirmation across the line.
Maggie, remind us why President Trump wants Todd Blanche to be the attorney general so badly. He could have easily just left him as acting attorney general. And also, while I have you, aren't there loopholes in all of this that you could drive a truck through?
That's our understanding, Jake, and that's the reporting that my colleagues have this afternoon as to your last question about loopholes. You know, there are ways in which this fund could come back to life. There is also the separate question that you noted earlier at the top of the hour about the IRS exemption that the president, his sons, and their companies, which are an entanglement of a bunch of different LLCs, are expected to get in terms of back audits related to their taxes and the leak of the president's tax returns during his own first term. He was far from the only person whose taxes were leaked, but I don't know of any other settlements and exemptions that are coming to people. In terms of what our understanding is as to how he got here with Todd Blanche, when Jonathan Swan, my co-author of Regime Change, and I were meeting with the president for a fact-checking interview in March of this year, Pam Bondi was still the attorney general. President Trump was clearly not happy with her. We already knew he'd been criticizing her. But when we asked about his past private criticism of Todd Blanche, which was similar for not moving faster on the prosecutions that he wanted to see against his perceived enemies, he was effusive in his praise of Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche has been a loyal personal defender of the president, and it's very clear that the president expects that to continue. What that looks like going forward, we don't know, but we do know what Trump expects.
Tom, you worked at the Justice Department, so reality check for us. How easy or hard would it be for this fund to be reborn?
I don't think it would be terribly difficult for this fund to be reborn. I think the best way to look at this, Jake, is that this is more of a political guarantee that the fund won't come back into existence rather than a legal guarantee. Todd Blanche, I think, was very careful and deliberate in the language he used, where he talked in the present tense. He said the fund is dead. That doesn't mean they couldn't try to resurrect it several weeks, several months later down the road, nor does it mean that they couldn't try to create a similar fund structured differently, but that they could legitimately claim that this is not that old anti-weaponization fund that everyone was upset about, but it's something completely different. So they could try to achieve what the president has made abundantly clear he wants to see happen, but just through a different mechanism.
And Tom, the president still gets this, as Maggie just referenced, this massive benefit from the IRS deal, this personal immunity from past tax issues that could spare him a $100 million tax penalty, according to the New York Times. I mean, is there anything stopping every future president in the history, forever in the United States from getting the same great deal?
Well, let's see. I guess thing number one that could stop them would be the advice of his own Justice Department lawyers, who in some circumstances could say this is not a good idea, either legally or politically. The other thing, Jake, that could stop them are the federal courts. Keep in mind that this current anti-weaponization fund is being challenged in several federal courts. And to be sure, the guarantee that Todd Blanche gave last night might satisfy and assuage the concerns of Senators Cornyn and Tillis, but it's also going to have to satisfy the concerns of federal judges. Before they get rid of these challenges to the anti-weaponization fund, these judges are going to want to have binding legal assurance that this fund isn't coming back before they dismiss the case. And they are going to demand a far higher standard of proof than Senators Cornyn and Tillis.
Maggie, let's look ahead to a possible scenario next year. A Democratic House majority and Attorney General Todd Blanche. That seems to me like a real recipe for confrontation. I mean, the Democrats would theoretically launch lots of investigations, and Blanche would, I think it's fair to say, probably not be inclined to cooperate.
Yeah, Jake, I think this is the major question mark hanging over what happens post-November if Democrats retake control of the House and possibly the Senate, as they seem poised to do in current polling. We don't know by what margin if that does happen, but we have seen, Justice Departments either slow walk or not comply with congressional subpoenas on very specific matters. What we haven't seen before is an entire government or major aspects of the government or elements of the government that simply don't respond to these subpoenas. And Congress does have pretty limited recourse in what it can do. It can take a contempt of Congress vote against the Attorney General. I guess I'm just not sure who adjudicates that in terms of an actual criminal complaint at that point or a criminal referral. This government, I think, just based on our reporting, is pretty willing and ready to drag things out. And as we have seen over time, that is President Trump's tactic repeatedly. And I just want to add one note, too, to Caitlin's reporting earlier. That is also our reporting, that there was full awareness on the part of not just the White House, but of President Trump about what the plans were to try to get Blanche over the line in terms of a compromise.
Caitlin, one of the reasons this happened is because President Trump has not been friendly to Senators Tillis of North Carolina and John Cornyn of Texas. They are now going along with this agreement. Are they back in Trump's good graces or no?
I mean, obviously, this helps the fact that they are not holding up Todd Blanche to where he had to pull his nomination, as he was threatening to do last week. But I mean, the president, part of, the argument that was made to him here and that he believes is that they did this only because he ensured that the two of them will not be in the U.S. Senate next year, with Tillis not running and with Cornyn obviously being primaried and the president supporting the challenger who beat him, Ken Paxton, in that race. And so I think the notion that they are fine is just not the case here. But I mean, obviously going forward, they are happy that at least Todd Blanche is getting over the line.